The Curses and the Covenants, a History Weaver Mystery, Book 2, by Connie Worden, read by the author. Chapter 18. June 1st, 1898. 1 week since our little boy's death. How have I survived it? I'm not even sure. Mostly I feel as though I'm walking in my sleep. Nothing feels real. Until a sudden stab of pain courses so intensely through my mind it almost seems to be bodily. Then it is all too real. The remembrance that I've lost my child comes in at any opportune moment. When I'm washing our clothing, or peeling potatoes, or sweeping the floor. I complete the tasks required of me, but I'm unaware of them as I work. Then there are the worst times, when I almost forget momentarily what has happened, though I am never without a dull ache in my midsection that tells me something is wrong. I become aware of why that dull ache is in place, and then the knowledge of Ollie's death returns to me, sharp and agonizing. All refuses to cry. Instead, he's growing steadily more angry. At first he was sullen and silent. Now he has become prone to bursts and fits of rage. I remember my anger the first day after Ollie's death, and I try to have patience with my husband when he lashes out for no apparent reason. It is his way of mourning. But it is such a way. Why must he make things worse for the other who grieves alongside him? We buried our little boy the same day we discovered him dead. There was no reason to wait. I've known bereaved mothers who could hardly bear to let go of the child's remains, wanting desperately to hang on to even the fragments left behind. Truth to be told, I had the opposite reaction. I own myself to have felt an unreasoning horror in the presence of little Ollie's body once he had left it. After all, he was no longer there. What is there left of him to hang on to? Immediately after we buried our wee one in a hastily made wooden coffin and said a few words over his tiny grave, all went to find Charlie Littlebird to tell him our sad news, and to return to him the cradle, so he can return it to the people who loaned it to us. We have both developed a loathing of the object that somehow extends beyond its original meaning, and now is only a reminder of the babe we once laid in it. Though we haven't said as much to each other, I believe we're both coming to have a superstitious aversion to it, because of the knowledge in the back of our minds that some kind of curse was spoken over it, and over our newborn, whose bed it was for such a short while, should we break covenant with the people who loaned it to us. I know neither of us truly believe in the curse, but I imagine that all, like me, finds he can't entirely disbelieve in it just now either. Regardless, we didn't want to have the thing anywhere in our immediate vicinity. That much we both knew. All seems most angry with the native peoples. A contingent of them came around our homestead yesterday and all drove them off without taking the trouble to try to understand what they wanted. Perhaps they simply wanted to come and condole with us over the loss of our son, but all would have none of it, whatever the reason for their coming. I fear his rashness will create enemies for us amongst the locals, both the settlers and the natives. Relations have been peaceful up till now, and I know the settlers will not take kindly to all causing any kind of disturbance in those peaceful relations. Besides the unspeakable pain of losing our child, I now fear for our future. I fear for my future. I don't recognize the man I married in the wrathful stranger he's become. I can only hope that he will return to his old self when after the first passion of grief has run its course. All seems to have no such fear for our future. In his calmer moments, he endeavours to lift my spirits by his talk of gold. Gold, 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 if there's one object more accursed than the cradle to me, it's that idol of All's heart. I no longer can raise any enthusiasm for his projects, but perhaps that is the only relief All finds in this hour of our deepest distress. He throws himself into his work and comes in well after dark, having apparently been digging tunnels all by himself by lantern light, following the bright vein. I'm glad he can have such relief as he can glean from it. I can find none anyway. I hadn't forgotten that I'd planned to ask Ma about the diary her great-grandma had written. From what I remembered, some enterprising family member had typed it out and made copies for every descendant of great-great-grandma Evangel in Ma's generation. So Auntie Donna should still have a copy if Ma couldn't find hers. Ma could instantly lay her hands on her copy, however, when I asked her about it the next time I was at her house, and I took the binder that contained it back to the Beast for some bedtime reading. I stayed up later than I should have, reading halfway through the diary, but I wanted it fresh in my memory for writing club after school the next day. We hadn't had time for the girls in the writing club to give me every detail of their adventures of the summer, so I turned it into an in-club short assignment. They were to confer with each other as to how to divide the story up, and each one would take a part and tell it in greater detail. It was Coral who wrote about the 7 strange articles of furniture that her brother Will had discovered by falling through the earth and landing in their hiding place. The pieces were a mystery to the girls. Because of some certain symbols carved on them that were the same as the symbols carved on the cradle at the center of their adventures, they knew they must be somehow connected to the cradle. But they didn't know how, and they didn't know what had become of the 7 articles. Their friend Georgie believed that a man named Joe Delway, and possibly a friend of his, had taken the pieces and hidden them away. But Joe was now in prison, and the girls didn't know where he may have taken the furniture. I instantly put together the 7 articles of furniture from the girls' description, and the 7 sacred objects from great-great-grandma Evangel's diary. With my recent reading in her diary, I was able to fill the girls in on some of the history of the 7 pieces. But that left us none the wiser to the more modern parts of the mystery that we were left to wonder about. Our writing club was rapidly turning into a near facsimile of the detective club Sarah and I had founded when we first discovered Nancy Drew books. But the chances of the writing club's success in answering any of the questions that the 7 sacred pieces raised seemed about as great as the success Sarah and I had found in our sleuthing venture. That is to say, pretty much nil. I'd have to finish the diary that night and see if there was any more to be learned about the cradle or the 7 sacred objects. And maybe, if nothing else, it could turn into another writing assignment. The girls could write a story about the 7 sacred pieces and imagine the solution to the mystery surrounding them. I gave it to them for writing club homework during the week. As an added bonus, they could learn a little history of the Beaver Row area. I promised to bring in my great-great-grandmother's diary, after I finished reading it, for them to take turns reading. If Ma would agree to lend it out, that was. June 15th, 1898. There are rumours of Indian uprisings all over the province, claims on the part of the native peoples that the official treaties have not been upheld. I am constantly nervous. There are rumblings amongst our local peoples as well. Though the land being mined and the bridge being built for the railway tracks near our land is not on official treaty land, we've been told that our native neighbours consider it their sacred land, and are unhappy with the projects being carried on it. All has learned that the source of the superstition of this piece of land being sacred is connected somehow to 7 sacred objects, wooden and stone articles of furniture. The cradle of the covenant would be the 8th, but it is in a different class somehow. The tract of land in question is considered to be the ancestral home and rightful lodging place of the sacred objects. Although the main tribe in our area is semi-nomadic, they do return every year to the land where the sacred objects reside permanently. I don't know the meaning behind the objects. All explained to me as much of the story as he could glean from Mr. Tamori and Mr. O'Leary, who heard the account from Charlie Littlebird. There is some legend attached to the objects that has been passed down from generation to generation, and the people apparently believe their history and its remembrance could be lost if the objects are not preserved and protected. Hence, their superstitious attachment to the land itself. All has the idea that if these objects could be found and removed, perhaps preserved in a safer place, then the railroad and man in operation could move ahead without fear of repercussion. I think he is optimistic in this belief. I believe the Indians have a tenacious clinging to their old ways that will inevitably clash with modern times. The best I can hope is for some kind of peaceful resolution. But I fear it may end in violence, as these situations so often do.